In the fog-shrouded labyrinth of 1920s London, Tallow Street lay like a forgotten vein in the city's pulsing heart. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, the stern magistrate whose judgments had sealed fates in the Old Bailey, stepped from his dimly lit study into the chill autumn night. A muffled cry pierced the mist, then silence. By dawn, his chambers stood empty, papers scattered, a bloodied letter opener glinting on the Persian rug. Whispers of vanishing echoed through the cobbled alleys. Who had spirited away the unyielding arbiter of justice? The enigma beckoned, a puzzle wrapped in shadows, demanding resolution. Chapter 1. The Summons to Tallow Street. The fog of 1920s London draped Tallow Street in a shroud of mystery, its narrow cobbles glistening under the feeble glow of gas lamps. The air was heavy with the scent of coal smoke and damp earth, a fitting cloak for secrets. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, the formidable magistrate whose rulings in the Old Bailey had sent countless souls to the gallows or the colonies, was known to tread these stones nightly, retiring to his study with a cigar and a glass of brandy. His judgments were as unyielding as the iron bars of Newgate, his reputation as stern as the granite facades lining the street. Yet on this October eve, as the city's pulse slowed to a murmur, a cry, brief, sharp, and swallowed by the mist, had marked his final moment in the public eye. By dawn, his study stood empty, save for a bloodied letter opener glinting on the Persian rug, papers strewn like fallen leaves, and a pair of shattered spectacles winking in the half-light. Sir Reginald had vanished, and with him the order he so fiercely upheld. In his Whitehaven Mansions flat, Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his impeccably waxed mustache and eyes like polished steel, sipped his morning tisane. The autumn chill crept through the window, but Poirot's mind was alight with anticipation. A telegram, delivered with the urgency of a thunderclap, lay open on his mahogany desk. Magistrate vanished, foul play suspected, assistance imperative, inspector. His bowler hat askew, his face a map of worry and exasperation. "Poirot, old chap, you've come just in time," Japp said, his voice rough with fatigue. "This one's a proper mystery. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, poof, gone like a ghost in the night. Last seen entering his study at 9 o'clock yesterday evening. Door locked from the inside, no sign of forced entry. Yet there's blood on the floor, and his spectacles smashed to bits. It's as if the devil himself spirited him away." Poirot's eyes twinkled with amusement, though his expression remained grave. "The devil, mon ami? No. The devil leaves hoofprints, and I see none here. Let us examine this stage where the drama unfolded." He stepped into the study, his patent leather shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. The room was a testament to Sir Reginald's austere character. Heavy oak furniture, shelves lined with legal tomes, a single crystal decanter of brandy gleaming on a sideboard. The Persian rug, its intricate patterns marred by a dark stain, drew Poirot's attention. He crouched, his gloved fingers hovering over the bloodied letter opener. Fresh blood, yet not copious. A wound, perhaps, but not fatal here. And these papers, scattered but not randomly. Someone wished to suggest chaos. Japp scratched his chin. "We've searched the house top to bottom. No body, no sign of Sir Reginald. His coat and hat are still on the rack, so he didn't leave willingly. Or so it seems." Poirot's gaze darted to the shattered spectacles, their gold rims twisted. A man of precision, this magistrate. He would not leave such a scene without purpose. "Tell me, who resides in this house of shadows?" Japp gestured toward the drawing-room, where the household had gathered, their faces pale as the fog outside. "The family's in there, along with a colleague who showed up uninvited. Bit of a tense lot, if you ask me." The drawing-room was a study in opulence, its velvet drapes and crystal chandelier at odds with the grim mood. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, the magistrate's wife, sat ramrod straight, her mourning black gown accentuating her pallor. Her eyes—
"But I didn't touch him, I swear." Debts from gambling dens and unsavory associates loomed large in his file. Poirot's mustache twitched. A prodigal son, desperate and resentful, another thread in the tapestry. Judge Harlan Whittaker, a colleague of Sir Reginald's, stood by the fireplace, his judicial robes lending him an air of authority. His jowls quivered as he spoke. "Reginald and I had our differences, professional, of course. But this— preposterous." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The recent promotion dispute had set tongues wagging in legal circles. Whittaker's presence, unbidden, was a curiosity in itself. Lastly, Eliza Markham, the housemaid, hovered at the room's edge, her apron pristine, but her eyes darting nervously. "I heard a noise last night, sir," she whispered to Poirot. "A muffled cry. Then nothing. I saw a shadow outside the study window, but when I looked it was gone." Her loyalty to the household was unquestioned, yet her brother's dismissal by Sir Reginald for theft lingered as a potential grievance. Poirot paced the study once more, his mind a whirl of details. The bloodstain, too precise for a struggle. A torn cufflink, monogrammed with an E, caught in the rug's fringe. An anonymous letter, tucked beneath a ledger, hinted at blackmail. "Your sins will find you out." The window, locked, but with a faint scratch on the sill, suggested an outside presence, or a clever ruse. "The little grey cells, they begin to dance," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the heavy air. He questioned each suspect with surgical precision, noting their hesitations, their glances. Lady Evelyn claimed ignorance of the letter, her composure faltering. Edmund's alibi, a night at the Red Lion pub, was vague, his cronies unreliable. Whittaker dismissed the blackmail note as poppycock, yet his fingers drummed nervously. Eliza's shadow story wavered under scrutiny. Her handkerchief, produced from a pocket, bore a faint bloodstain. "I cut my hand cleaning, sir," she stammered. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The study's atmosphere grew oppressive. A footprint in the dust. A man's boot. Too large for any in the household. The fog thickened outside, curling like a conspirator around the house. Poirot stood motionless, his mind assembling the fragments. Blood, blackmail, a hidden shadow, a missing magistrate. "This is no mere vanishing," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "It is a performance, staged to conceal a darker truth. But whose hand directs this play?" Chapter 2. Shadows of Suspicion. The fog clung to Tallow Street like a conspirator, its tendrils curling around the gas lamps as dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised violet. Inside the Hawthorne townhouse, the drawing-room was a crucible of tension, its heavy drapes and mahogany furnishings absorbing the weight of unspoken secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his diminutive frame commanding the room with the quiet authority of a conductor before a symphony. His grey eyes, sharp as a falcon's, swept over the assembled suspects. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, her elegance a brittle mask. Edmund Hawthorne, slouched and sullen. Judge Harlan Whittaker, puffing with indignation. And Eliza Markham, the housemaid, her nervous hands twisting her apron. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and cigar smoke, a reminder of Sir Reginald's vanished presence. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his French accent slicing through the silence. "The vanishing of Sir Reginald is no act of magic, no. It is a puzzle of the human heart, and we shall uncover its truth with order and method." Poirot's investigation had begun in earnest, his little grey cells whirring like the gears of a finely tuned clock. The study, with its bloodied letter opener and scattered papers, had yielded its first clues, but they were fragments of a larger mosaic. The torn cufflink, monogrammed with an E, could belong to Edmund or Evelyn, or perhaps Eliza, though her modest station made it unlikely. The anonymous letter, its ink still fresh, warned of sins revisited, suggesting blackmail rooted in Sir Reginald's judicial past. The footprint in the servants' quarters, too large for any household member, hinted at an outsider, or a deliberate deception. Poirot's methodology was
a magistrate, Monsieur Poirot. Threats were not uncommon. I sought to spare him distress. Her composure was admirable, but Poirot noted the faint tremor in her fingers, the way her gaze darted to Edmund. The whispers of a strained marriage, coupled with the promise of a substantial inheritance, cast her in a shadowed light. Had she orchestrated the vanishing to secure her future? Edmund Hawthorne, sprawled in an armchair, reeked of gin and defiance. His alibi for the night of the disappearance was flimsy. A pub crawl through Soho's seedier establishments, his companions too inebriated to corroborate his tale. "Father was a tyrant," he growled, his bloodshot eyes meeting Poirot's briefly before dropping. "He cut off my funds, threatened to disinherit me entirely, said I'd shamed the family name. His debts, rumoured to exceed £1,000, were owed to unsavoury figures in London's underbelly." Poirot observed his trembling hands, the sweat beading on his brow. "Monsieur Edmund, a man so desperate might act rashly. Where were you, precisely, at 9 o'clock? Edmund shrugged, his tone petulant. "The Red Lion, maybe the Black Swan. I don't keep a diary." His evasiveness was a thread Poirot tugged gently, noting the young man's clenched jaw. A son scorned, with motive aplenty. But was he capable of more than bluster? Judge Harlan Whittaker stood by the fireplace, his judicial robes lending him an air of gravitas that faltered under Poirot's scrutiny. "Reginald and I had our differences," he admitted, his voice booming as if addressing a courtroom. "Professional rivalries, nothing more. He opposed my recent elevation to the bench, but murder? Absurd." Yet Scotland Yard's files hinted at a deeper grudge. Whittaker had lost a coveted promotion to Sir Reginald years prior, and their recent collaboration on a smuggling case had ended in heated words. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Whittaker, you arrived unbidden this morning. Why such haste to involve?" "Perhaps, but chemical analysis later revealed it to be mere laudanum, a common sedative. A planted clue or an innocent mistake? Eliza's loyalty was unquestioned, but her brother's death in prison, following Sir Reginald's ruling, added a layer of motive." Poirot paced the drawing room, his patent leather shoes clicking rhythmically on the parquet floor. The clues were a tapestry of misdirection. The blood in the study, possibly animal rather than human. The shattered spectacles, suggesting a struggle that never occurred. The burned note, its ashes a whisper of destroyed evidence. He paused by the window, where the fog pressed like a living thing. "The little details, they speak loudly," he murmured. "The cufflink, the footprint, the letter, they are threads in a web. But who is the spider?" He turned to the suspects, his voice measured. "Each of you has a secret, a reason to wish Sir Reginald gone. Madame Evelyn, your marriage was not the idyll you claim. Monsieur Edmund, your debts choke you like a noose. Monsieur Whittaker, your ambition clashed with his. And Mademoiselle Eliza, your loyalty is perhaps a mask for vengeance." The room stilled, breaths held as Poirot's words hung in the air. To deepen the inquiry, Poirot requested Sir Reginald's private correspondence from the family solicitor, a dour man named Mr. Cresswell. Among the letters was a cryptic note, postmarked a week prior. The truth of the smuggling case will bury you. It bore no signature, but its tone matched the burned note's menace. Poirot's mind raced. Sir Reginald had presided over a high-profile smuggling trial, convicting a notorious gang. Had one of their number sought revenge, or was this another diversion? The study yielded further clues. Behind a bookshelf, Poirot discovered a faint scratch on the wall, suggesting a hidden panel. With Japp's assistance, he pressed the wood, revealing a narrow passage leading to the alley behind Tallow Street. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, his eyes gleaming. "The vanishing is explained, not by sorcery, but by architecture. Sir Reginald was taken, alive or dead, through this secret way. The passage was damp and narrow, its walls slick with moss. At its end, in the alley, deeper than we know." The suspect's reactions were telling. Lady Evelyn's hand flew to her throat. Edmund cursed under his breath. Whitaker's face reddened, and Eliza shrank back, her eyes wide. Poirot's gaze lingered on each, his mind cataloguing their tells. The blackmail note, the hidden passage, the stolen will, each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. As night deepened, the fog outside seemed to seep into the house, blurring the edges of truth. Poirot stood by the study window, his silhouette sharp against the dim glow. "The shadows of suspicion fall on all," he said to Japp. "But one among them weaves this web with cunning. We must watch, listen, and wait for the misstep." The hidden ledger. The fog that cloaked Tallow Street had thickened into a near-opaque veil, muffling the clatter of London's evening bustle, as if the city itself held its breath. Inside the Hawthorne townhouse, the air was heavy with suspicion, the lamplight casting long shadows that danced like specters across the oak-paneled walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his compact frame a study in stillness, his gray eyes gleaming with the intensity of a predator stalking an unseen quarry. The scream from the alley moments ago had sent Inspector Japp scrambling to investigate, but Poirot remained, his fingers tracing the edge of the now empty safe. The theft of Sir Reginald Hawthorne's will, coupled with the discovery of the hidden passage, had shifted the investigation's tide. "The little gray cells, they whisper of secrets buried deep," Poirot murmured, his French accent a soft cadence in the oppressive silence. "This vanishing is but a curtain drawn over a darker crime." The study, with its lingering scent of cigar smoke and brandy, was a tableau of disruption. The bloodied letter opener, the scattered papers, the shattered spectacles. Yet the hidden passage behind the bookshelf had revealed a new dimension to the mystery. Sir Reginald, the stern magistrate whose rulings had shaped fates in the Old Bailey, had not simply vanished. He had been spirited away, through a secret artery of the house, to an unknown fate. The monogrammed glove, marked with an E,
judicial fines into private accounts, investments in shadowy enterprises, and cryptic notations about a smuggling case. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed softly. "The magistrate was no saint. Corruption taints the scales of justice. This ledger, it is the key to his enemies." He turned to the drawing room, where the suspects awaited, their faces a gallery of unease. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, regal in her mourning black, sat with her hands folded, but her knuckles were white. "Reginald mentioned investments," she said, her voice measured but strained. "He said they were for our future, but they went awry. I knew nothing of impropriety." Her claim rang hollow. The ledger's evidence threatened her social standing and the inheritance she stood to gain. Had she known of her husband's corruption and acted to protect her reputation? Poirot noted her averted gaze, the slight quiver of her lips. Edmund Hawthorne, the prodigal son, slouched in a corner, his disheveled suit a testament to his unraveling life. When confronted with the ledger, he paled. "I forged a few checks in father's name," he he admitted, his voice hoarse. Just to cover debts, nothing major. He found out, threatened to have me arrested. We argued that night, but I didn't touch him. The argument, heated and public, had occurred hours before the vanishing. Edmund's debts, owed to ruthless creditors, painted him as desperate, but his trembling hands suggested fear more than guilt. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Monsieur Edmund, a man cornered by debt is a man capable of much. Where did you go after this quarrel? Edmund shrugged, his eyes flickering. Back to the pub. I don't remember much after that. His alibi, as before, was a fog of inebriation, unverifiable by his dubious companions. Judge Harlan Whitaker, standing by the fireplace, his judicial robes now discarded for a somber suit, bristled at the ledger's implications. Reginald and I shared certain arrangements, he confessed, his voice low. We took bribes to sway smuggling trials. He wanted out, said his conscience weighed heavy. I persuaded him to stay, but we quarreled. The admission was a crack in Whitaker's pompous facade.
Once, she said, producing a silver trinket engraved with a rose. He was kind, years ago. But lately he was distant, cold. Her voice broke, hinting at a deeper connection, romantic perhaps, or merely sentimental. Her brother's death in prison, following Sir Reginald's harsh ruling, added a motive of vengeance. Yet the laudanum vial, initially thought to be poison, suggested someone had planted a false clue to implicate her. Mademoiselle Eliza, Poirot said gently, your loyalty is admirable. But what did you overhear that night? She hesitated. Voices in the study, arguing. I couldn't make out the words, but one was familiar, not Master Edmund's, nor her ladyship's. Her glance darted to Whitaker, then away. A clue or another misdirection? Poirot returned to the study, his mind a whirl of connections. The hidden passage was a revelation, its damp walls and mossy floor suggesting recent use. The glove, found at its alley exit, was a deliberate plant, its pristine condition at odds with the passage's grime. The blood on the letter opener, Japp's analysis confirmed, was porcine, not human, a staged scene to suggest violence where none had occurred in the study. The vanishing was a performance, Poirot mused to Japp, who had returned from the alley empty-handed. Sir Reginald was taken, alive or otherwise, to conceal a greater crime. Further clues emerged. A faint scratch on the safe's lock, suggesting tampering before the theft. A cigar stub in the passage, its brand matching Whitaker's preferred blend. A torn scrap of paper in the ledger, bearing the initials H.W. Was Whitaker the spider weaving this web, or was the glove's E meant to shift blame to Evelyn or Edmund? Poirot interrogated the suspects anew, his questions like darts seeking a target. Lady Evelyn admitted to overhearing her husband's plans to amend his will, reducing her share. I begged him to reconsider, she said, her voice cracking. He refused. Her motive deepened. Financial ruin loomed if Sir Reginald's corruption surfaced. Edmund confessed to sneaking in the drawing room. Lady Evelyn clutched her pearls. Edmund swore. Whitaker's face reddened, and Eliza swayed, clutching the locket. Poirot's mind raced. The ledger's revelations pointed to a motive of exposure. Sir Reginald's plan to confess his corruption threatened all who profited. The passage suggested a planned abduction, the blood a ruse to delay pursuit. But the body in the Thames, was it the magistrate, or another twist in this labyrinth of deceit? The clock struck 9, its chimes a mournful echo of the hour Sir Reginald vanished. Poirot stood by the study's hidden panel, his fingers tracing its edges. The truth lies in what was taken, he said to Japp. The will, the ledger, they guard the secret of Tallow Street.
Chapter 4. Rivers of Deception. The telegram's stark words hung in the air like a noose, its paper crisp in Poirot's gloved hand. Body found, Thames River. Identify immediately. The drawing-room of the Hawthorne townhouse fell into a stunned silence, the fog outside pressing against the windows as if eager to witness the unraveling. Inspector Japp, his face ashen, pocketed his notebook. "Blimey, Poirot! If that's Sir Reginald, the vanishing was just the opening act." Hercule Poirot, his moustache impeccably waxed despite the late hour, nodded gravely. "Précisément, mon ami. The river yields its secrets reluctantly, but yield it shall. We go to the morgue, now." The journey through London's nocturnal veins was a sombre affair. The cab rattled over slick cobblestones, the Thames a black ribbon glinting under sporadic gas lamps. Poirot's mind, a whirlwind of deduction, pieced the puzzle. The hidden passage, the embezzlement ledger, the planted glove. The body in the river suggested murder, not mere disappearance, and the timing, midnight, post-vanishing, implied a calculated transport. "The culprit is bold," Poirot murmured to Japp. "To move a man through the city unseen requires cunning or complicity." At the morgue, a grim editor nodded, scribbling notes. Dumped to weigh him down, but the current freed him. No witnesses yet. Identification was swift. Lady Evelyn, summoned by telegram, arrived veiled and trembling, confirming with a choked sob, "My husband, who could do this?" Her grief seemed genuine, but Poirot noted her dry eyes. Edmund followed, reeking of brandy, his face a mask of shock, or relief. Whittaker, arriving last, blanched. Reginald! Barbaric! Eliza, supported by a constable, wept openly. Back at Tallow Street, the house felt like a tomb. Poirot convened the suspects in the study, the bloodstain on the rug now a mocking reminder. "The vanishing was a ruse," he declared. "Pig's blood, staged to suggest violence here. The true murder occurred by the river, to dispose of the body and evidence." Japp's lab confirmation had arrived via runner. The study blood was indeed animal, procured from a nearby butcher. Alibis crumbled under scrutiny. Lady Evelyn claimed solitude in her boudoir, reading a novel. "I heard nothing," she insisted. But a neighbor, interviewed hastily, had glimpsed a veiled figure, matching her description, slipping out the back gate near midnight. "Madame," Poirot said softly, "a widow's grief is sacred, but lies are not. Why venture into the fog?" She faltered. "I needed air. The strain was unbearable." Her motive sharpened. Discovery of the corruption would strip her of inheritance, tainted by scandal. Edmund's blackout alibi held less water. Bar tabs showed he nursed only 2 pints, sober enough to act. "I wandered home late," he muttered. "Must have passed out in the garden." But footprints in the alley mud didn't match his boots. Poirot's gaze pierced him. "Monsieur, desperation breeds invention. Did you follow your father, seeking reconciliation or confrontation?" Whittaker produced a witness, his clerk, a nervous youth named Perkins, swearing to a late meeting at the club. "We discussed cases till—"
"Greed betrays," Poirot said, holding it aloft upon return. The group assembled, Whittaker's eyes bulging. "Planted! I swear on my honor!" Confronted, he blustered. "Reginald was cutting me out of the bribes. He planned to confess everything, to ruin me." The ledger's entries corroborated. Whittaker had skimmed extra. Sir Reginald demanding a halt.
Poirot paced, reconstructing. Lured to the study with drugged brandy, laudanum traces in the decanter. Sir Reginald was subdued, the scene staged with pig's blood. Dragged through the passage to a waiting cab, perhaps Edmund's gambling cronies bribed. Then to the river for the fatal slash. The ring, pocketed in haste. Lady Evelyn gasped. "You monster!" Edmund lunged, restrained by Japp. Eliza fainted into a chair, but doubts lingered. The gloves, Evelyn's, but found in the passage. Was she complicit, or another frame? As accusations flew, the clock struck midnight, echoing the murder hour. Tension crackled like lightning. Chapter 5. The Gathering Storm. The gunshot's echo lingered in the fog-laden air of Tallow Street, a sharp punctuation to the unraveling mystery. The garden, cloaked in mist, was a chaos of shadows as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp rushed toward the slumped figure of Eliza Markham. The housemaid lay against the cold stone wall, her apron stained crimson, a pistol glinting in her limp hand. A faint pulse fluttered beneath Poirot's probing fingers. "She lives," he declared, his voice cutting through the gasps of the assembled household. "Vite, Japp! Summon a doctor!" The wound, a graze to her temple, suggested a failed suicide, or a calculated attempt to silence her. Eliza's eyes fluttered open, her voice a ragged whisper. "It wasn't me. Someone fired from the dark. A shadow." Her words, trembling with fear, deepened the enigma. Poirot's grey cells whirred, the puzzle of Sir Reginald Hawthorne's murder tightening like a noose. The household, Lady Evelyn, Edmund and Judge Harlan Whittaker, stood frozen.
That could ruin.
Her glance flickered toward Whittaker, then away, a silent accusation. Poirot noted her fear, her hesitation. A loyal servant caught in a deadly game. Was she a witness or a pawn? Poirot assembled the suspects, his presence commanding despite his diminutive stature. "Mesdames et messieurs, the storm gathers," he said, his French accent lending gravitas to the moment. Sir Reginald's murder was no impulsive act. The vanishing, the pig's blood, the river, all staged to conceal a motive rooted in betrayal. Each of you holds a piece of this truth, but one weaves the lie. The room stilled, breaths held as his gaze swept over them. Lady Evelyn, her mourning gown a stark contrast to her pale face, clutched her pearls. The ledger's revelations, her husband's embezzlement, threatened her social standing and inheritance. "I knew of his dealings," she admitted, her voice brittle. "He promised to make amends, to protect us, but I did nothing." Her alibi, a solitary evening reading, was pierced by the neighbor's sighting of a veiled figure. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, to know and remain silent is a choice. Did you act to preserve your future?" Edmund, his eyes bloodshot, shifted uneasily. His debts and disinheritance painted him desperate, yet his alibi, drunk and wandering, gained traction with a barmaid's reluctant confirmation. "I hated him," he muttered. "But kill him? I'm no murderer." The footprints in the alley, mismatched to his boots, suggested he was not the physical perpetrator, but his gambling cronies remained a shadow in the case. "Monsieur Edmund," Poirot pressed, "did you enlist others to settle your score?" Whittaker, his jowls quivering, stood by the fireplace, the signet ring's discovery in his chambers a damning clue. "I told you it was planted," he roared, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. His confession of shared corruption with Sir Reginald, coupled with their falling out, pointed to a motive of self-preservation. The cigar stub in the passage, the forged receipt, the typewriter-linked letters, all circled him like vultures.
Poirot's pointed to Evelyn, or Edmund, or a clever misdirection. The stolen will,
The missing ledger pages, the blackmail notes, all suggested a desperate bid to conceal corruption. Poirot's methodology shone. He catalogued inconsistencies, probed micro-expressions, and reconstructed timelines with surgical precision. Returning to the study, Poirot examined the safe anew. A faint scratch on the lock confirmed tampering, but the thief's haste left traces, a fiber of black silk matching Lady Evelyn's gown. "Curieux," Poirot murmured. "A lady's touch, or another plant?" He retraced the passage, finding a second clue, a button, monogrammed with a W lodged in a crack. Whitaker's? The evidence tightened around him, yet Poirot sensed a deeper game. Interrogations deepened. Lady Evelyn admitted to confronting Sir Reginald about the will. "He planned to leave me nothing," she whispered. "I begged, but he was resolute." Her motive, financial ruin, loomed large, but her delicate frame seemed ill-suited to dragging a body through the passage. Edmund's story shifted. He'd met a creditor that night, paying a partial sum. "They threatened to break my legs," he said, his voice raw. The creditor, a shadowy figure named Malone, was known to Poirot's contacts in London's underbelly. Had Edmund hired muscle? The footprints, too large for the household, suggested an accomplice. Whitaker's bluster faltered when shown the button. "My coat's been tampered with," he protested. But his clerk, Perkins, confessed to lying about the alibi under duress. "He paid me, sir," Perkins mumbled, "said it was for my family." Whitaker's corruption, his fear of exposure, made him the prime suspect. Yet the glove's E gnawed at Poirot's logic. Eliza's shadow sightings grew suspect. A search of her room revealed a hidden letter, unsigned. "Keep silent or join your brother." A threat, or her own fabrication? Her locket, when opened, held a lock of Sir Reginald's hair, a keepsake too intimate for a mere servant. Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle, love and hate are close kin. What was a symphony of deceit? Each note played to conceal a truth. The ledger exposed his corruption. The passage hid his exit. The river erased his fate. But one among you conducts this orchestra." Lady Evelyn's eyes glistened. Edmund's fists clenched. Whitaker's face reddened. Eliza clutched her locket. Poirot's deductions crystallized. The footprint matched Whitaker's boot, confirmed by Japp's plaster cast. The glove, Evelyn's, was planted, her silk fiber a careless error. The ring, Edmund's attempt to frame Whitaker, was a clumsy misstep. The shot at Eliza? A warning to silence her testimony. Yet a final piece eluded him. "The truth is near," Poirot said, his eyes locking on each suspect. "But one of you is not who you seem. The storm reveals all." Chapter 6. The Unveiling. The creak of the floorboard in the hidden passage reverberated through the Tallow Street townhouse, a sinister note in the symphony of the night. The fog outside clung to the windows like a shroud, amplifying the tension within the drawing room where Hercule Poirot stood, his diminutive frame a beacon of calm amidst the storm. The suspects, Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, Edmund Hawthorne, Judge Harlan Whitaker, and the recovering Eliza Markham, sat rigid, their faces etched with dread as Poirot's gray eyes, sharp as polished steel, pierced each in turn. The gunshot that had grazed Eliza hours earlier, the stolen will, the bloodied signet ring, and the secret passage all converged in this moment. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his French accent cutting through the silence like a blade. The vanishing of Sir Reginald Hawthorne was no enigma of the supernatural. No, it was a calculated deception, a murder cloaked in shadows. But the little gray cells, they have seen through the veil. The room was a crucible of anticipation, the air heavy with the scent of wax and fear. Poirot paced, his patent leather shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor, his mustache twitching with purpose. The clues had been meticulously gathered. The pig's blood in the study, a staged ruse. The hidden passage, a path to the of your husband's corruption. You feared ruin, no? But your role was one of silence, not action. Evelyn's eyes glistened, her voice a whisper. I begged him to stop, to confess. He refused, said it would destroy us. I did nothing more. Her alibi, weakened by the neighbor's sighting, held a kernel of truth. Her fear was real, but her hands were clean. Edmund Hawthorne, slouched in his chair, reeked of desperation and gin. His debts and disinheritance painted him as a suspect, but the footprints in the alley, too large for his boots, exonerated him from the physical act. The signet ring, briefly suspected as his frame of Whitaker, was a misstep born of panic, not murder. Monsieur Edmund, Poirot said, your anger was great, your debts greater. But you sought to profit from chaos, not create it. Edmund's eyes widened. I swear, I only wanted his money, not his life. A barmaid's testimony, grudgingly given, confirmed his drunken stupor at the Red Lion, far from the river at midnight. Eliza Markham, pale and bandaged, clutched her locket, its lock of Sir Reginald's hair a testament to a past affection. Her brother's death in prison, by Sir Reginald's ruling, fueled a motive of vengeance. Yet the laudanum vial, a false clue, pointed to a frame. The shot at her was no suicide. Her testimony of a familiar voice arguing with Sir Reginald was the key. Mademoiselle, Poirot said softly, you saw too much, heard too much. Your loyalty was your shield, but also your peril. Eliza nodded, tears falling. I loved him once, but I'd never harm him. The shadow, it was real. Her fear, Poirot deduced, was genuine, her role that of an unwitting witness. All eyes turned to Judge Harlan Whitaker, his jowls quivering as he stood by the fireplace, the weight of evidence crushing his bluster. The cigar stub in the passage, the button with a W, the signet ring in his chambers, the typewriter-linked blackmail notes, all pointed to him. The ledger revealed his deeper embezzlement. Betrayed the plan. The signet ring, pocketed in haste, was a fatal error. The glove, planted to implicate Evelyn, a clever misdirection. Red herrings fell away. The bloody knife, stolen from Eliza's kitchen, was a frame. The laudanum vial, a distraction. The anonymous letters, Whitaker's own, typed to sow chaos. The shot at Eliza, his desperate bid to silence her, overhearing his argument with Sir Reginald about the smuggling bribes. You wove a web, Monsieur Whitaker, Poirot said, his voice a crescendo. But the threads betray you. The footprint in the alley, your boot, confirmed by plaster cast. The button, torn in your haste. The ring, your trophy of greed. Whitaker lunged, his bulk surprising in its speed, but Japp and two constables restrained him, cuffs clicking shut. Confess, mon ami, Poirot urged. The game is up. Whitaker's defiance crumbled, his voice a snarl. He deserved it, greedy fool, threatening to ruin me. I took what was mine. His confession, raw and venomous, sealed his fate. The room exhaled, the storm breaking. Lady Evelyn wept, her relief palpable. Edmund slumped, his debts no longer a noose. Eliza clutched her locket, vindicated. Poirot stood motionless, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Order and method, he said to Japp. They prevail over chaos. The truth, it always finds the light. As dawn crept through the fog, Tallow Street stirred, its shadows retreating. Japp led Whitaker away, the clatter of the police van fading into the city's pulse. Poirot adjusted his overcoat, his moustache twitching with satisfaction. The puzzle is solved, mon ami, he said, stepping into the mist. But the human heart, it remains the greatest mystery. The townhouse stood silent,
its secrets laid bare. Sir Reginald's corruption, Whittaker's betrayal, the staged vanishing, all resolved in the crucible of Poirot's logic. The will, recovered from Whittaker's chambers, restored Evelyn's inheritance, though tainted by scandal. Edmund faced his debts, chastened but free. Eliza, her loyalty unbroken, resumed her duties. The locket a quiet reminder of love lost.
Poirot. Yet as the constables led Whittaker away, his venomous snarl, "He deserved it," lingered like a stain. The case was closed, but echoes of truth, like ripples on the Thames, demanded one final reckoning. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp as ever, scanned the remaining players: Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, Edmund Hawthorne, and Eliza Markham. "Mes amis," he said, his French accent soft but commanding. "The storm has passed, but its echoes reveal truths yet unspoken. We must listen closely." The drawing room, with its velvet drapes and flickering gas lamps, felt like a stage after the curtain's fall. The tension of the past days, Sir Reginald's vanishing, the staged blood, the body in the river, had left the household raw. Poirot's resolution of the murder had exposed Whittaker's greed, his orchestration of a drugged brandy, a staged scene, and a fatal riverside slash. But questions lingered. The monogrammed glove, the silk fiber, the shot at Eliza, were they mere loose threads, or signs of a deeper complicity? Poirot's methodology, order, method, and the pursuit of the human heart compelled him to probe further, to ensure no shadow remained. He began with Lady Evelyn, seated rigidly, her morning gown a shield against the world. The ledger's revelation of Sir Reginald's embezzlement had threatened her inheritance, her social standing. The silk fiber in the safe, matching her gown, hinted at her presence during the theft of the will. Yet the glove, marked with an E, was too pristine. A plant. "Madam," Poirot said, his voice a velvet blade, "you knew of your husband's corruption. You feared ruin, perhaps disgrace. Did you play a part beyond silence?" Evelyn's eyes, red-rimmed but resolute, met his. "I knew, Monsieur Poirot. He confessed his dealings months ago, swore to make amends. I urged him to go to the authorities, but he feared the scandal. I was in the study that night, not to steal, but to plead for our future." Her voice broke, a rare crack in her composure. The neighbor's sighting of a veiled figure supported her tale of a midnight walk, driven by despair, not guilt. Poirot nodded, his suspicions.
His gambling cronies, Poirot learned, had been questioned by Japp. None knew of Tallow Street's secrets. Yet Edmund's knowledge of the passage raised a question. Had he unwittingly aided Whittaker by revealing it years prior? "I never told him," Edmund insisted, his voice raw. "But Whittaker visited often. He could have found it." Poirot's mustache twitched. A plausible oversight, but not a crime. Eliza Markham, pale and bandaged from the gunshot graze, sat clutching her locket, its lock of Sir Reginald's hair, a silent confession of past affection. Her brother's death in prison, by Sir Reginald's ruling, fueled a motive, but the laudanum vial was a plant, the shot at her a warning. Her testimony of a familiar voice arguing with Sir Reginald pointed to Whittaker, but her fear suggested more. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you heard too much, saw too much. The shadow in the garden, who was it, truly?" Eliza's eyes darted, then steadied. "It was him, Whittaker. I saw his coat, the judicial one, in the alley before the shot. He knew I'd heard him threaten Sir Reginald about the bribes." Her words, corroborated by the button with a W in the passage, sealed Whittaker's fate. But the threatening letter in her room, "Keep silent or join your brother," suggested a second hand. Poirot pressed. "Did another urge you to silence?" She shook her head, tears falling. "No, sir. Just him. He terrified me."
Poirot paced, his mind a whirl of connections. The case's mechanics were clear. Whitaker, fearing Sir Reginald's confession, drugged his brandy with laudanum, traces in the decanter, staged the study with pig's blood, and dragged him through the passage to a cab. At the Thames, a slit throat ended the magistrate's life, the body dumped to sink. The signet ring, pocketed in haste, betrayed Whitaker. The glove, planted to implicate Evelyn, was his misdirection. The shot at Eliza was his final act to silence her testimony of the blackmail argument. Yet the echoes persisted. Poirot returned.
She nodded, ashamed. Reginald showed me years ago for safety. I never thought. Poirot raised a hand. Your silence was no crime. Monsieur Edmond, your boyhood discovery aided no one consciously, and Mademoiselle Eliza, your courage exposed the killer. The red herrings, knife, laudanum, letters, were Whitaker's desperate ploys. The glove, a frame for Evelyn. The ring, his trophy. The shot, his panic. The will, recovered, restored Evelyn's inheritance, though tainted. Edmund faced his debts, chastened. Eliza, her loyalty unbroken, would heal. As noon approached, Tallow Street stirred, its fog lifting. Japp's report confirmed Whitaker's transfer to Newgate, his confession solid. Poirot adjusted his overcoat, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The truth, mon ami, is a river. It flows, it reveals, it cleanses. The household dispersed, each to their reckoning. Evelyn to rebuild her name, Edmund to face his creditors, Eliza to mourn her past. Poirot stepped into the street, the city's pulse quickening. The echoes fade, he said to Japp, but the little grey cells, they never rest. Chapter 8. Shadows Lifted. The midday sun pierced the thinning fog of Tallow Street, casting a golden haze over the cobblestones as if London itself sought to cleanse the stains of the night. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat neatly buttoned and his cane tapping a rhythmic cadence, paused at the threshold of the Hawthorne townhouse. The mystery of Sir Reginald Hawthorne's vanishing and murder had been laid bare. Judge Harlan Whitaker's hand, guided by greed and fear of exposure, had drugged the magistrate, staged a gruesome scene with pig's blood, spirited him through the hidden passage to the Thames, and silenced him with a fatal slash. The confession, wrung from Whitaker's blustering lips, echoed in Poirot's mind like a discordant note in a symphony now resolved. Yet, as Inspector Japp clapped him on the back with a hearty, "Well done, old chap," Poirot sensed the echoes of truth demanded one final verse. Suit hovered near the fireplace. His gambling debts, now confronted without the shadow of murder, pressed upon him like an unpaid promissory note. "I was a fool, sir," he admitted, his petulant scowl softened by shame. "Father's threats drove me to desperation, but I never dreamed." Poirot's gaze softened. "Monsieur Edmond, desperation is the seed of many sins, but not this one. Your knowledge of the passage, a boyhood secret, aided no crime. Face your creditors with the courage you lacked before. Reform is the true inheritance." Eliza Markham, her bandage removed to reveal a fading bruise, served tea with trembling hands, her locket glinting at her throat. The shot meant to silence her had only amplified her testimony. The familiar voice sealing Whitaker's doom. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her eyes downcast. "Sir Reginald, he wasn't all sternness. That locket, it was from kinder days." Poirot nodded, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle, love and loyalty are rare virtues in this web of deceit. Your brother's fate was tragic, but vengeance was not yours to claim.
You are free now, to heal, to remember without hate. Jap, puffing on a cigarette, interjected with Scotland Yard's efficiency.
Whitaker's singing like a canary, Poirot. Confessed to buying the pig's blood from a Smithfield butcher, bribing a cabbie for the river run, even forging the blackmail notes on his own typewriter. The signet ring, souvenir of his victory. Trials set for the Old Bailey. Ironic, eh? Poirot's lips curled in a faint smile. Irony indeed. The scales of justice, once tilted by their corruption, now balanced true. To ensure no shadows lingered, Poirot revisited the study, its Persian rug scrubbed clean, the letter opener locked away as evidence. The hidden panel behind the bookshelf yawned open, a reminder of architectural deceit. He traced its edges, noting the dust undisturbed since discovery. The passage, built light. The shadows lift, he declared, but let us illuminate the remnants. He recounted the timeline with precision. Whitaker's arrival at 9, the drugged brandy, the staging by past, the passage drag amid Sir Reginald's stupor, the cab to the Thames by 10, the murder at midnight, the body, weighted with stones, surfaced due to a snag on a barge. Red herrings, the knife, vial, letters, were Whitaker's diversions, each traced to his hand. Lady Evelyn spoke of her marriages straying, Sir Reginald's ambition devouring their joy. He became the law itself, unyielding. Edmund vowed reform, eyes on a clerkship. Eliza dreamed of leaving service, perhaps a village life. Poirot listened, his empathy a quiet force. The heart mends slowly, but it mends. Jap's men arrived with warrants, sealing the study. Whitaker, in custody, had attempted escape, foiled by a vigilant guard. "He's broken," Jap said. "Mumbles of ruined ambitions." Poirot nodded. Ambition without method is folly. As evening fell, Poirot prepared to depart, his flat at Whitehaven Mansions calling. A telegram from Chief Inspector Davison hinted at a new case, a jewel theft at a country estate, but Tallow Street's echoes faded. He shook hands, Evelyn's grateful, Edmund's firm, Eliza's tearful, Jap's hearty. Stepping into the street, the fog a mere veil, Poirot inhaled the city's vigor. "Order restored," he murmured. "The little grey cells triumph." A newsboy hawked headlines of the arrest, Justice's trumpet. Tallow Street, once shrouded, breathed free. In the cab, Poirot reflected. The human soul, a labyrinth of motives, yielded to logic. Whitaker's trial would expose the rot in the judiciary, a catalyst for reform. The Hawthorns, scarred but standing, embodied resilience. The sun set, painting the Thames gold. Poirot's mustache twitched. Another puzzle awaited. But for now, shadows lifted. Chapter 9. The Final Reckoning. The late afternoon light filtered through the thinning fog of Tallow Street, casting long shadows that and polished mahogany bore the weight of recent revelations. The safe, now sealed by Scotland Yard, had yielded its secrets. The stolen will, the embezzlement ledger, the monogrammed glove. Whitaker's confession, laced with venom and regret, had detailed his scheme, drugging Sir Reginald's brandy, staging the study with pig's blood, dragging the magistrate through the passage, and delivering the fatal slash by the river. The signet ring, the forged letters, the shot at Eliza, all were his desperate ploys to bury his corruption. Yet, Poirot's little grey cells, ever vigilant, sensed unresolved threads. The silk fibre from Evelyn's gown, the passage's origins, the precise timing of Eliza's attack. "The puzzle is complete," he murmured to Inspector Japp, who leaned against the fireplace. "But the human heart leaves traces we must not ignore." Poirot began with Lady Evelyn, her grey dress a quiet rebellion against morning's formality. The ledger's exposure of Sir Reginald's smuggling bribes had threatened her world, yet her role seemed confined to anguished silence. The silk fibre in the safe, matching her gown, suggested a fleeting presence, but not guilt. "Madame," Poirot said, his voice gentle but probing, "you stood in this study the night of the vanishing, pleading with your husband. Why conceal this moment?" Evelyn's eyes, weary but clear, met his. "I feared judgment, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald's corruption was a chain around us both. I begged him to confess, to spare our name. He refused, said it was too late." Her admission aligned with the neighbour's sighting of a veiled figure, a woman seeking solace in the fog. Poirot nodded. "Your silence was born of loyalty, not deceit. The truth frees you now." Edmund Hawthorne, his dishevelled air replaced by a tentative resolve, stood by the window, the city's pulse faint beyond the glass. His debts and disinheritance had cast suspicion, but the alley footprints, too large for his boots, brother's fate, is remarkable. But the letter, "Keep silent, or join your brother." Who placed it in your room? Eliza's eyes widened, then softened. "It was slipped under my door, sir, after the argument. I thought it was Whittaker, but the handwriting, it wasn't his." Poirot's moustache twitched. A final clue, overlooked in the storm of accusation. Japp, puffing on a cigarette, interjected with a grunt. "We've got Whittaker dead to rights, Poirot. The butcher confirmed the blood, the cabbies turned King's evidence, and the typewriter's a match. Why fuss over loose ends?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Because, mon ami, the truth is a mosaic, and every piece must fit. The letter suggests a shadow player, perhaps not in murder, but in manipulation." To resolve this, Poirot requested a final inspection of the study. The hidden panel, now common knowledge, yawned like a confession. He traced its edges, noting a faint inscription in the wood. 1763, J.H. Likely the house's original owner, a smuggler who built the passage for illicit trade. "No accomplice," Poirot murmured, "but a house that whispers its own secrets." A search of Eliza's room, conducted with her consent, revealed the letter's envelope, its postmark smudged but legible. A local station, dated the day before the vanishing. The handwriting, looping and precise, matched none in the household. But a sample from Whittaker's clerk, Perkins, was uncanny in its similarity. Poirot summoned Perkins, a nervous youth with ink-stained fingers, to the townhouse. Under gentle probing, Perkins crumbled. "Judge Whittaker made me write it," he stammered. "Said it was to scare the maid, keep her quiet about the bribes. I didn't know he'd kill anyone." The letter, a preemptive strike to silence Eliza's eavesdropping, was Whittaker's final miscalculation, penned by a pawn to deflect suspicion. The household reconvened, the drawing-room bathed in fading light. Poirot stood, his voice a crescendo of clarity.
Fortnight. Whittaker's done. Bribery, murder, the lot. The Old Bailey'll have a field day.
Poirot nodded, his satisfaction tempered by empathy. Justice is served, but the heart bears scars. As evening deepened, Poirot prepared to depart. His Whitehaven mansion's flat a haven of order.
A new case loomed. A diplomat's missing papers, but Tallow Street's shadows were dispelled. He shook hands. Evelyn's grateful, Edmund's firm, Eliza's trembling, Jap's robust. Stepping into the street, the fog a mere wisp, Poirot inhaled London's vitality. "The truth, it is a beacon," he murmured. A newsboy's cry of Whitaker's arrest echoed, justice's herald. Tallow Street, once a labyrinth of deceit, stood cleansed. In the cab, Poirot reflected, Whitaker's trial would shake the judiciary, a purge of corruption. The Hawthorns, scarred but resolute, embodied hope. Eliza's quiet strength, a testament to loyalty's endurance. The Thames sparkled under a rising moon. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Another puzzle awaited. But for now the final reckoning was complete. "Order and method," he whispered. "They triumph always." Chapter 10. The Light of Justice. The twilight of Tallow Street draped the Hawthorne townhouse in a quiet dignity, as if the very stones exhaled relief after days of turmoil. The fog that had clung to London's cobblestones like a conspirator had finally lifted, revealing a sky streaked with amber and violet. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold of the grand Georgian residence, his overcoat pristine, his cane a steady companion tapping against the pavement. The murder of Sir Reginald Hawthorne, his vanishing, the staged blood, the river's grim revelation, had been unravelled with surgical precision. Judge Harlan Whitaker's confession, a venomous admission of greed and betrayal, had sealed his fate, and the echoes of truth had been reckoned in the previous gathering. Yet as Poirot prepared to leave Tallow Street, a final duty called, to ensure the light of justice illuminated every corner, leaving a plume of smoke.
Whitaker's trial is set, and the papers are calling it the scandal of the decade. But why linger? The bloke's done for. Poirot's mustache twitched, his grey eyes gleaming. Mon ami. Justice is not merely a verdict. It is a restoration of order, a healing of wounds. We must ensure the truth leaves no scars unaddressed. The case's mechanics were clear. Whitaker, fearing Sir Reginald's intent to confess their shared embezzlement, had drugged his brandy with laudanum, staged the study with pig's blood, dragged him through the hidden passage, and slit his throat by the Thames. The signet ring, the forged letters, the shot at Eliza, all were Whitaker's desperate ploys, unraveled by Poirot's logic. Yet, the silk fibre, the passage's origins, and the letter to Eliza hinted at nuances unresolved. Poirot began with Lady Evelyn, whose inheritance was secured by the recovered will but tainted by her husband's corruption. "Madam," he said, his voice a blend of firmness and empathy, "you stood in the study, pleading for Sir Reginald to confess his sins. The silk fibre was yours, a trace of that moment. But was there more you withheld?" Evelyn's hands clasped tightly, her voice steady but soft. "I hid nothing more, Monsieur Poirot. I knew of the bribes, the smuggling trials. I urged him to make amends, to spare our daughter's memory. She died young, you know, and he carried that guilt. He refused, fearing disgrace. Her candor, corroborated by the neighbor's sighting of her midnight walk, absolved her of complicity." Poirot nodded. "Your loyalty was your burden, madame. Now you are free to rebuild, unshadowed by deceit." Edmund, his face no longer clouded by gin, met Poirot's gaze with newfound resolve. His debts had painted him desperate, but the mismatched footprints and a barmaid's testimony cleared him of murder. The passage, known to him since childhood, was a secret he swore he kept. "Monsieur Edmund," Poirot said, "your knowledge of the passage could have been exploited. Did you ever speak of it, even in jest, to Whitaker or another?"
Edmund shook his head, Poirot said gently. Your courage exposed the truth. But the locket, the letter, did another in this house know of your bond with Sir Reginald? Eliza's eyes glistened, her voice a whisper. No, sir. He gave me the locket years ago, when I was new here. A kindness, nothing more. The letter terrified me, but I kept silent till you came. Poirot's gaze softened. Her testimony, corroborated by Perkins's confession, confirmed Whitaker's sole hand in the threats. Japp, impatient for closure, waved a report. Whitaker's trial's a formality now. The cabbie's testimony, the butcher's receipt, the typewriter match, it's airtight. Perkins is testifying too, poor sod. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Yet, mon ami, we must ensure no doubt lingers. The letter to Eliza, the passage's history, small threads, but they must be tied. To that end, Poirot requested a final review of the study. The hidden panel, a relic of 1763 smuggling, stood open, its mossy walls silent witnesses. A faint scratch on the panel's hinge, overlooked before, caught Poirot's eye, a mark of frequent use, predating the murder. Curieux, he murmured. The passage was no secret to Sir Reginald, nor to Whitaker's prying eyes. A search of the solicitor's records, delivered by a harried Mr. Cresswell, confirmed the house's history. Built by a merchant with smuggling ties, the passage was a family legend. Sir Reginald knew it, Cresswell said. He mentioned it once, jokingly, as an escape for debts. Poirot's final interrogation focused on Perkins, summoned again. The clerk, trembling, admitted to more than the letter. Whitaker had me watch the house, sir. Said to report if Sir Reginald met anyone suspicious. I saw nothing, but he was paranoid, thought the magistrate was turning on him. This vigilance explained Whitaker's knowledge of Eliza's eavesdropping, prompting the letter and shot. No other accomplice emerged. Whitaker's greed was his sole partner. In the drawing room, Poirot addressed the household, his voice a beacon of clarity. The light of justice. The trial would expose the judiciary's rot, a purge begun by one man's conscience and another's crime. Order prevails, Poirot whispered, his cane tapping a farewell. The Thames gleamed, a mirror of truth. Poirot's eyes sparkled. Another puzzle awaited, but for now, the light of justice shone bright.